She smiled as everyone clapped for her, holding up the gift I spent 3 weeks planning down to the last receipt. And then she said, "I just wanted to do something special for this family," while my mother-in-law teared up and called her the only one who truly cares. And my husband, he didn't even look at me. He just nodded like it was all true. And in that moment, standing there on Christmas Eve with a glass of wine in my shaking hand, I realized I had just been erased from my own life, and no one was going to say a word for me. If this story speaks to your heart, only if it truly resonates with you, take a second to like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from, your city, your country, and what time it is for you right now, because I want to know who's here with me in this moment. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, and that night, Christmas Eve at my husband's family home in Connecticut, was the night everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. But to understand how she managed to stand there and take credit for something that was mine, you need to go back 3 weeks earlier to a quiet Tuesday night in my kitchen when I made the mistake of trusting her. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing alone in my kitchen at exactly 9:12 p.m., staring at a spreadsheet on my laptop and a half-finished sketch of what I thought could finally make me feel like I belonged in Daniel's family. Because for 5 years I had been the outsider, the one who tried too hard, the one who never quite got it right. And this time I wanted something different. I wanted something thoughtful, something personal, something that would make his mother look at me the way she looked at Rachel. So I built it carefully, piece by piece, a custom holiday gift box for every member of the family, each one tailored with handwritten notes, curated items, and small details that only someone who truly paid attention would notice. I tracked every purchase, every shipping confirmation, every receipt saved neatly in a folder labeled Christmas Project, and for the first time in a long time, I felt proud of something I created. I even remember smiling to myself as I wrapped the final box in deep red paper, thinking maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year they would finally see me. And that was the night Rachel stopped by, unannounced. She walked in like she always did, confident, effortless, already part of everything I was still trying to earn. She leaned against my kitchen counter, watching me work, and asked in that casual tone of hers, "What are you working on?" And I hesitated for a second. Just a second, because something in me told me to keep it to myself, but I ignored it. I told myself I was overthinking, that she was family, so I showed her everything. I walked her through the idea, the customization, the notes, the sourcing, even the timeline, and she nodded along, smiling, asking questions, the kind that felt supportive at the time, but now I realize were too specific, too detailed, like she was memorizing every step. She even picked up one of the boxes and said, "This is actually really good, Emily, like really good." And I felt something warm in my chest hearing that from her, because Rachel did not compliment easily, and before she left, she said something I did not think much of at the time. She said, "You should definitely bring these on Christmas Eve. Everyone is going to love this." And I remember laughing, saying, "That is the plan." And then she hugged me, quick, light, like always, and walked out. And for the next 2 weeks, I kept working quietly, finishing the last details, double-checking everything, making sure it was perfect. But something started to feel off, small things at first, like how she suddenly stopped asking me about my plans, how she seemed unusually relaxed whenever Christmas came up, how she kept saying things like, "This year is going to be memorable," with a smile I could not quite read. And then 2 days before Christmas, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. I was scrolling through my email looking for a shipping confirmation when I saw a forwarded message in my sent folder, something I did not remember sending. It was my entire project outline, the same file I had shown Rachel that night, forwarded to an address I did not recognize. And for a second I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe I clicked something by accident. Maybe it was nothing. But then I opened the file, and my name was gone, replaced with a different author tag. And that was the moment my chest went cold, because suddenly it did not feel like coincidence anymore. It felt like something was already in motion, something I did not fully understand yet, and I just sat there staring at the screen, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But deep down I knew this was not just about a Christmas gift anymore, and whatever Rachel was doing, it had already started without me. I sat there staring at that forwarded file for a long time, my cursor blinking at the top where my name used to be. replaced with something else like I had never existed in the first place. And I remember my first instinct was to call Daniel, to ask him if he knew anything about it. But something stopped me. Something quiet but firm, because I already knew what he would say. He would tell me I was overthinking, that it was probably a glitch, that Rachel would never do something like that, and I did not want to hear that again, not this time. So instead I started digging, slowly, carefully, like I was afraid of what I might find if I moved too fast. I checked the email headers, the timestamps, the forwarding chain, and everything pointed to one thing. It had been sent from my account late at night, at a time I knew I was asleep, and the access log showed a login from a device that was not mine, and my stomach dropped because Rachel had borrowed my laptop that exact night she came over. She said her phone died, and she needed to check something quickly. I had handed it to her without thinking, trusting her completely, and now every piece was starting to line up in a way that made my chest feel tight. But I still told myself maybe it was just the file. Maybe she copied the idea and ran with it. Maybe it was not as bad as it looked. Until the next morning, when I got a notification from my shared family group chat. Rachel had sent a message saying she was so excited to surprise everyone this year with something she had been working on for weeks, and I felt my fingers go cold holding my phone because those were my exact words, the same phrasing I used when I told her about the project, and the replies came flooding in, my mother-in-law sending heart emojis, Daniel replying, "That sounds amazing," and no one questioning it, no one asking what it was, just immediate praise, like she had already won something I had not even presented yet. And I stared at the screen thinking I should say something, I should correct it, I should just type one message and set the record straight, but I did not, because something deeper started forming in my mind, something sharper than hurt. I realized if I said something now, she would deny it, she would twist it, she would make it sound like we both had the same idea, or worse, that I copied her, and I would end up looking desperate. So I stayed quiet, but I did not stop. I went back to my laptop and started documenting everything. I saved the original files with timestamps. I backed up every receipt, every order confirmation, every note I had written. I even took screenshots of the metadata showing when each file was created and edited, and I saved copies in 3 different places because I did not trust anything anymore. And then I did something I had never done before. I waited. I let her have the spotlight. I let the family believe whatever they wanted to believe. I let Christmas Eve come closer without saying a single word, and the closer it got, the more confident she became. I could see it in the way she carried herself, in the way she smiled during phone calls, in the way she barely acknowledged me anymore, like I was already irrelevant, like the story had already been rewritten and I was no longer part of it. And that was when I understood something that changed everything for me. This was not just about her taking credit for a gift. This was about control, about positioning herself as the one who mattered, the one who contributed, the one who deserved recognition in a family where I had always been on the outside looking in. And she thought she had done it perfectly. She thought I would stay quiet, that I would swallow it like I always had. But what she did not know was that I had every piece of proof sitting in my phone, waiting for the right moment, and as Christmas Eve got closer, I stopped feeling hurt. I stopped feeling confused, and instead I felt something else, something steady and clear, because I knew exactly when I was going to say something, and more importantly, I knew exactly how. Christmas Eve arrived colder than I expected, 28 degrees outside with frost clinging to the windows of Linda's house, but inside everything was warm, loud, glowing with lights and laughter, and I stood there in the hallway, holding the gift boxes I had spent weeks preparing, my hands steady, my expression calm, because by then I was no longer unsure. I knew exactly what was about to happen. I just needed to see how far she was willing to go. Rachel was already in the living room, dressed perfectly, laughing easily, moving through the space like she owned it, and when she saw me, she gave me a quick smile, the kind that did not reach her eyes, like we shared a secret only she thought she controlled. I placed my boxes quietly on the side table, not announcing anything, not drawing attention, just waiting, and it did not take long. Dinner ended, wine was poured, and Linda clapped her hands together and said it was time for gifts. And that was when Rachel stood up, smooth, confident, like she had rehearsed it, and said, "Actually, I have something special for everyone this year." And I felt the room shift toward her instantly, every eye, every expectation, And I watched her walk over to the exact table where my boxes were placed, picking them up one by one like they belonged to her, like they always had. And then she started explaining the concept, every detail, every intention, every personal touch, all of it word for word what I had told her in my kitchen, and no one questioned it. No one even glanced at me. Linda's face softened with pride. Daniel smiled like he was impressed, and someone said, "Rachel, this is so thoughtful," and I stood there feeling something inside me go completely still, not broken, not emotional, just clear, because this was it. This was the moment she chose to take everything, not just the idea but the recognition, the place in the family I had been trying to earn for years. And when she handed the first box to Linda and said, "I really wanted to show how much I care about each of you," Linda pulled her into a hug and said, "You always do. You are the only one who does." And that sentence landed harder than anything else because it erased me completely, not just tonight, but all the effort I had ever made. And I felt Daniel step closer to Rachel, nodding, agreeing, like it was obvious, like it had always been her. And I realized something in that second that I had not fully admitted before. This was not just Rachel's doing. This was a system I had been living in, where I was always second, always overlooked, always replaceable. And for a brief moment, a very brief moment, I almost let it go. I almost told myself it did not matter, that it was just a gift, just a holiday, not worth creating tension, not worth ruining the night. And then Rachel looked at me, just for a second, and smirked, a small, controlled smile that no one else noticed. But I did, and in that instant everything sharpened again, because that smile was not about the gift, it was about winning, about proving she could take something from me and I would do nothing about it. And that was the moment I understood she was counting on my silence. She was depending on it. And I felt my phone in my hand, the weight of every screenshot, every receipt, every piece of proof I had saved. And I took a slow breath, letting the room settle into its applause, letting her finish her performance, because I knew something she did not. I knew this was only the beginning of what I was about to say, and I stepped forward, not loud, not dramatic, just enough to be heard, and said, "That is interesting." And the room went quiet in a way that felt different, like something had shifted under the surface, and I looked directly at her and added, because I remember planning every single part of that, and for the first time that night, Rachel's smile faltered, just slightly, just enough for me to see it, and I knew then she was not ready for what was coming next. For a second, no one moved, no one spoke, and I could feel every pair of eyes shift from Rachel to me like they were trying to understand what I had just said. And Rachel let out a small laugh, light, controlled, like she was already preparing her defense, and she said, "What do you mean, Emily?" Her tone calm but just slightly too careful. And I stepped closer, still holding my phone, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me, and I said, "I mean the handwritten notes. The customized boxes, the item selections based on everyone's preferences. I put that together." And I watched her face, the way her eyes flickered for half a second before she smiled again, wider this time, and said, "Oh, you mean when we talked about ideas? I thought we were both working on something similar." And there it was, the exact response I knew she would use, soft enough to sound reasonable, vague enough to blur the truth. And I nodded slowly, like I was considering her words, and I said, "That is interesting, because I do not remember sending you my entire project file." And the room shifted again, quieter now, heavier, and I unlocked my phone, my thumb steady as I opened the folder I had prepared days ago, and I turned the screen toward Linda first. Not Rachel, not Daniel, but Linda, because I knew exactly whose opinion mattered most in that room. And I said, "These are the original files, created on December 3rd, every edit timestamped, every note written in my account." And I scrolled slowly, letting the dates show, the progression, the work, and then I tapped to the next screen. And these are the receipts, every purchase, every item, all under my name. And I could feel the air change, the warmth of the room cooling into something else, something sharper, and Rachel stepped forward slightly, her voice tighter now. "Emily, this is not necessary. It is Christmas." But I did not stop. I shook my head gently and said, "No, it is necessary, because this is the part that matters." And I opened the final screenshot, the forwarded email, the one with my project attached and my name removed, and I held it there for a second before turning it fully toward the group, and I said, "This was sent from my account at 1:42 in the morning, from a device that is not mine, on the same night you borrowed my laptop," and that was when the silence became complete. No shifting, no whispering, just stillness, and Rachel's face changed. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough. The confidence slipping just slightly, the edges of her composure tightening, and she said, "I do not know what that is." But her voice did not match her words, and Linda looked from the phone to Rachel, her expression no longer warm, no longer proud, but uncertain, questioning. And Daniel finally spoke, his voice low. "Rachel, what is she talking about?" And I did not raise my voice. I did not push. I simply let the evidence sit there between us, undeniable, clear, and I said, "I am not trying to ruin anything. I just want the truth to be clear." And I stepped back, giving her space, giving the moment room to unfold, because I knew I did not need to argue. I did not need to convince anyone. The proof was already doing that for me. And Rachel looked around the room, searching for support, for someone to step in, to defend her. But no one moved, no one spoke, and for the first time since I had known her, she looked unsure, like the ground under her had shifted and she did not know how to stand on it anymore. And I realized something as I watched her. This was not just about exposing what she did. It was about changing how they saw her, how they saw me, how the entire dynamic in that room worked. And as the silence stretched, heavy and undeniable, I knew this moment was not going to end the way she thought it would. Because this was only the first layer of what I was about to reveal, and what came next would make everything she did look small in comparison. The house felt different after that night, quieter in a way that had nothing to do with the Christmas lights dimming or the guests leaving, but something deeper, something that had finally shifted beneath the surface. And for the first time since I had married into that family, I was not second-guessing myself. I was not replaying conversations in my head, wondering if I had imagined things. I was not shrinking to keep the peace. I was just still, clear, and strangely calm. Rachel did not stay much longer. After everything was laid out, she tried to explain, to soften it, to call it a misunderstanding, but the weight of what she did was already there, undeniable, and Linda did not hug her goodbye that night, not the way she used to. And Daniel, he was quiet on the drive home, the kind of quiet that meant he was finally seeing something he had ignored for too long, and that was all I needed. Not an apology, not a dramatic resolution, just the truth being seen for what it was. And in the weeks that followed, things did not magically become perfect. Relationships rarely do, but they became honest, and that honesty gave me something I had not had before: space, boundaries, and the strength to stop proving myself to people who had already decided who I was. Because the truth is, when someone is willing to take from you and present it as their own, it is not just about the action, it is about how they see you, and more importantly, how little they think you will defend yourself. And that is the lesson I carry with me now, that your silence will always be interpreted as permission, and your boundaries are not something you owe anyone an explanation for. You protect them because you matter. Your work matters. Your voice matters. And if something inside you feels off, if your instincts are telling you that something is not right, listen to that, because that quiet voice is not fear. It is awareness. It is something deeper, something God or the universe places inside you to guide you when things do not feel aligned. And I wish I had trusted mine sooner, but I am grateful I finally did. And if you are listening to this and you have ever felt overlooked, dismissed, or taken for granted by people who were supposed to value you, I want you to know you are not alone in that feeling. And more importantly, you are not wrong for wanting to be seen and respected. You do not have to fight loudly to reclaim your place. Sometimes all it takes is standing in your truth and letting it speak for itself, and that alone can change everything. So protect your ideas, protect your energy, protect your peace, not out of fear, but out of self-respect, because you deserve to exist fully in your own life without being reduced or rewritten by someone else. And if this story connected with you in any way, take a moment to share where you are watching from, your city, your country, and what time it is for you right now, because I truly want to know who is here with me. And if you feel like this message could help someone else, share it with them, because sometimes hearing that you are not alone is the first step toward healing. Thank you for being here. for listening, for staying through this journey with me. My name is Emily Carter. I am 32 years old, and the lesson I want to leave with you is this: never let anyone else define your value when you already know your worth.